What a very amateur beginning to a YouTube video. I haven't really created an intro as yet. I've got this like video that, thanks to AI, I've got going, but I do need to work on that. I need some music and some oomph and some excitement, I think.
Exactly. You can do some of those like a chant or something. Like
Yeah, yeah. Although that is a bit cliche. I mean,
no,
a lot
like
of the
for
YouTube channels
example,
do that.
yeah, no, of course, like but that's normally like a little bit of a sanitized version. I mean, like something directly from the game, or like a like a montage of something that's from a live game, or from a couple of live games, or something like I don't know, something. If I think of
I'll come up
something,
with
I'll let you
something, but
know.
I'm
Yeah,
open to ideas, so feel free to put them in the WhatsApp group for sure.
no problem, no problem.
Are we pumped for the season?
Um, See, I never allow myself to be pumped because this team has a way.
Yes, yes, that's true.
So my issue is always like I need to feel. There's a certain feeling you get when a team is ready. It's just like this feeling you have, and I'm not there yet. However, I am definitely happy to see some Carrick football,
Okay.
and I'm definitely happy to see how the new signings go. And yeah, we're not playing a million games so far, so it'll be good to see how we can, at the beginning of the season, you can normally sort of actually rack up some good points before it gets to the busy part. So yeah, I'm hoping to see some good things, next continuation from last season, and of course some evolving of some ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, let's have a look at those opening fixtures. Not specifically Hull right now, but if I just share on the screen our first half a dozen matches, I think I saw Opta had suggested that we have. I think they looked at the first 5 games, I guess,
Yeah.
before the international break, and they've put the numbers into the computer, and they said that we have the easiest 5 games on paper in the league. Interestingly, we've got City in there, albeit at home, but I guess
Mhm.
the other 4 are extremely winnable.
Yeah. I think probably what they're taking into consideration is uh I mean, of course, the other ones against, for example, Hull, Ipswich, Everton, Fulham. It's more like you kind of expect United to win those games if everything goes well. And then probably the other two, it's because they're home games, like you said. So that's probably why they say easier in a sense. Um, but if you really look at it, you can never look past Fulham. You can never look past what Everton can do on a day just because they feel like it. Um, Also, I mean, Hull, I mean, it's 1:30. If there's anything fantastic, like if there's a better time for a small club coming into the Premier League, it's this horrendous pitch, or not pitch but stadium, which is like really cozy, and it's 1:30.
Yeah,
um
1:30 our time, of course, 12:30 in the UK, but yeah.
yeah, and yeah, 12:30 in the UK, which is, I mean, I feel like the footballers at the top clubs have not woken up at that time. I feel like they are in dreamland somewhere. So I do think that it's not as easy as well just to call in that game as well. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see, because I think how will be raring to go, and then the onus is still on us to kind of do something. So
If we can get if we get 6, let's get 6 points on the board. We'll be joint
yeah,
top, whatever happens. I remember actually asking you the question about are you pumped? We got a last minute winner at home to Fulham, I think, with Xerxes 3
yeah,
years ago, 2 years ago, 2 years ago maybe. That was the year that Ten Hag eventually got or the season that Ten Hag eventually got the sack, I think. But that put us top. That puts top for almost 24 hours because we played on the Friday, you see.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, and I just think if we could, let's say we do get to that international break, and let's say we've got 4 wins and a draw, we're gonna be going to that international break, and I think that's not crazy. I'm not mega optimistic about this season. I'm not thinking that we're going to be winning the title or even challenging for it. Not right now. I think we're still one or two signings away. We'll come to the transfer business in a moment, but I do think it's also realistic to expect 2 wins in the first 2 games. I think the Hull match, you're right. I think they'll be pumped, especially that first 20 minutes. They've just got promoted. They were a little bit fortunate to get promoted. They were the sixth place team in the division. They haven't spent huge amounts. So I do, and then Ipswich at home. So we've got the 2 promoted sides. Everton away is always tricky, albeit their summer investment's been underwhelming. So I think it's not crazy to have 13 from 15 going into that international break.
Yeah.
What do you reckon?
And the thing is, I actually get you. I mean, if you really think about it, like, when I was saying that, I always like to have that feeling that the team has arrived. The sort of thing that happens when a team has arrived is you start the game with Hull, they try something for 15 minutes, and then you basically batter them 2 goals real quick by halftime. Game
That'd be
over,
nice.
and then you start from there, and then that's how, for example, I think a team with real authority, a team which is really ready, that's what they do, for especially for what we're trying to aim for. And I think it's really important that we win that, because what the media looks like, if anything goes wrong in that first game, and what our fan base also looks like. So
Yes.
I think it's really important, I think, just for momentum, that we have authority. Like, they can do whatever they like, 15 minutes, it's all emotion, it happens. But then we get a chance, we bury it, we get another chance, we bury it, and then you take the wind out of them, and then you can close the game off, properly in the second half. I think that, for me,
Reminds me a little bit as well of, I remember Liverpool, the year
yeah,
that they won the league under Slot, they had Ipswich away on the opening day.
yeah,
And they kind of did that. I think for half an hour, they hadn't scored. They might have got a goal just before half time, I'm not sure, or 2 early goals in the second half and killed it off. And that also killed Ipswich's momentum. I think Ipswich actually had a few good chances that day and were unlucky not to get the draw. But they won that match and went on to win the league. The other thing is, I remember 06, 07. We had Fulham at home on the opening day. I think we had Charlton as well in our first 3 games. It might even been our second game. And we had I think we also had Watford as well away. So those 3 games, we got 9 points. And suddenly Chelsea had lost to Middlesbrough, I'm going to say, in their second game that season, 06, 07. And that was it. That then gave us, you're then fighting harder than ever, because let's just say you're a few points off and Chelsea are already in the distance, as they often would be under Mourinho, but you could say the same likewise for Man City under Pep, or Liverpool under Klopp, or even maybe Liverpool under Slot to some extent in that first season. When those teams are already off in the distance, when you're hanging on to that 1-0 lead, you're not hanging on with exactly the same level of determination and verve as you are when you're hanging on to a 1-0 lead to stay top of the table. And that can just give you the momentum. This is not me here predicting a championship charge this season, but I do remember with fondness that 06, 07, because we were getting worse and worse. 04, 05, 05, 06, in a way, getting further away despite some of the investment. And in the summer of 06, we sold Van Nistelrooy and bought Michael Carrick. It was an extremely underwhelming summer transfer business. And yet we know what happened next.
Exactly. Yeah. No, so you're right. I mean, we really need momentum. And I think for me, that's the best way to start it, because I don't want to get to the City game and the Spurs game, because you know how this normally plays out, right? This is like the classic United thing, where the beginning of the season starts. We're going to talk about preseason, but then you see some nice things in preseason, and then the season starts, and then all of a sudden there's a big game that is almost a job-saving game, or some sort of the game is so propped up to being, if you lose this game, you know what's going to happen. And I mean that's happened against Ten Hag, for example. I think it was like you get battered by Brentford, you get battered by Brighton, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you have a Liverpool game and you're like, oh my god, you know what's gonna happen. And then you know, and then that becomes like the sort of you know, a trend, you know, that against the smaller teams again you're doing sort of this, we don't know if we're going to win or not, and then the big teams come around the corner and then it has to be this big thing. So I think for our season to really be a little bit different, I think we're going to have to see United win these games, these first 4 games especially, and then we can go into City and Spurs, you know, on the front foot for a change, because also one of the things is we always play big teams when we're in some sort of bad form. So we can never go out there and express ourselves anyways, because you as a coach, you're caught in between. It's such a big game. So then you decide you're going to almost not do what you did because you've been battered 3-0, 4-0, or you didn't get the win here. So every big game then turns into, okay, we have to play some sort of a 4-5-1 or 4-4-2. We got to sit and then we don't do anything. So I really think that it's also important that if we go playing football that's working, attacking football, good football, then by the time you get to City, then it's like same. You know, you just go in there and you also play to a certain level. So I think it's really important those 4 games, that we get those wins and we perform well. I think that's for me the most important. We just perform well.
Do you think the performances under Carrick, because towards the end, so that's from the minute he arrives, like mid-January, I think it was, and we get those 2 wins. The Man City performance in particular was extreme. I mean, we battered them. You know, you can't do much more than that against a Pep Guardiola Man City side. I think the Arsenal one was a bit backs against the wall at times, especially in the opening 20 minutes. But we get that equaliser and steady the ship. We get a couple of spectacular goals in the second half. Fantastic win, again, away from home against a team that's going to go on and win the league and reach the Champions League final. No complaints there, of course. But actually, from that moment onwards until the end of the season, I think the results were better than the performances. And so that is a small concern. But I mean, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I actually think that's fair. Yeah, I felt like I think it's a, you know, it's also a little bit of what we were watching before Carrick arrived was so different. So at the same time, I think even a 5% difference, a change in shape, a slight change in attitude from some players, I think then all of a sudden, you know, it would look fantastic. But City weren't good anyways last season. So there's a lot of teams that also put City to the sword. So I do think that maybe it's a little bit of, okay, what we were watching was so different and we did so much. And yeah, of course, we did dominate City. But I don't think that was out of the realms of possibility that you could play like that against that version of City. And then, like you said, the Arsenal, it was like 20 minutes. I think they were, you know, really dominant. And then after that, we came back into the game and we played really well. And then you saw then the pattern then started where, again, you play teams which you are expected to beat, but there is something that is clearly missing. So there's always we can start well for 15 minutes, right? And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, the manager from the other team does one small adjustment, a small tweak somewhere, and our players can't figure it out for the next 20 minutes. And then it's just giving the ball away and then away again. It's almost like the AC Milan game. It was pretty much how we normally perform in some of these games that we're supposed to do something in. And then because of quality, we end up winning them sometimes because the other team can't finish. Because actually, that's what happens a lot of the time. The other team really can't finish. And that's the difference in quality. So I think um, the problem, there's always an underlying problem. It's still there. We concede the same type of goals because there's similar mistakes from similar players. And it doesn't really matter what the formation or the shape is. Um, and for example, Carrick plays this system where he looks to limit a lot of our weaknesses, which also feeds into the idea that the team is not fully there. So um, I think that we were surviving on momentum a lot and also surviving on the fact that we were just compact and we were just asking players of a higher quality than some of these other teams to just do something very simple. So I think that was just what had to happen. I don't think we could expect our performances to just all of a sudden just go up and up and up and up and up, because you could see that Carrick was not teaching them anything else other than this thing that they had to do, just to focus on this thing. Because our players are not players that can all of a sudden have these complicated setups and all of a sudden you got to do this and then you got to do that. That's not how these players work. We've seen it. Anytime it gets difficult, anytime they get asked to do something a little different, we see the reports, people aren't happy, all of a sudden things aren't going well. So I think now we can truly now start to judge, because we now have more pieces, and we can actually look to play the football that we want to play. And if Tielemans cannot complete a pass, if Baleba cannot turn, if Mainu cannot beat his man, if Sesko cannot hold the ball up or release the ball nicely, if Cunha can't play his 1-2s, and Burmo can't make the right runs and keep the ball, then I think the question is different completely. Then I don't know what's wrong with the team. But now they are pieces. We've got a strong midfield. We've got Andre Santos, and then it has to be different now. The performances, So I think now we can really judge and we can say, yeah, this is how we play. I think by the fourth game we'll be able to see, okay, this is the real United of the season. This is how we've evolved. But yeah, I wouldn't really judge the last 6 months last season. I just think it was good vibes. It was fantastic. It was very simple. It was very minimalistic, and it just worked, So yeah, sorry I spoke for long there, but I was just...
Don't worry. It's good. It's good. All right, let's have a look. I've got this tweet from a couple of days ago that I put up. I've also got a poll going live on YouTube right now. Please do vote in that. I've got my phone ringing, which is extremely annoying. I'm going to turn this off right now, but fingers crossed you can still hear me. So I've got this tweet I put up the other day. This season's objectives for me are clear, and it's actually kind of similar to the poll on YouTube that you'll see in terms of predicting where we're going to finish in the league. So the worst case scenario, I think, is not qualifying for the Champions League, and especially if that's kind of obvious by as early as Christmas. Let's just say we're, even worse than, for example, under Amorim, we're sort of 6-7 points off top 5 by November, December. They might pull the plug and do something like last season, and who knows, Ollie might be back at the wheel or some other flavour of the month. Champions League qualifying, sort of similar to last season, but maybe a little bit closer to being outside of those places. In other words, we finish 4th or 5th. I think that means Carrick keeps his job, but there will be some questions in terms of a lack of progress if that's not seen. And of course, we'll need to see some investment. Now, let's get some more positive possibilities. The third, which is, I think, what a lot of United fans are hoping for. Of course, we have bigger objectives, but Champions League qualification plus a deep run in the Champions League, at least getting out of that group stage period, and maybe even getting as far as the quarters, or who knows, the dizzy heights of the semis, something like that, and possibly even throw in a cup. Maybe Champions League and we win the League Cup. Champions League qualification plus win the League Cup, or Champions League qualification, League Cup plus a deep run in the Champions League, something like that. That is what I think some optimistic Manchester United fans are predicting. And then there's the absolute optimum, probably sort of 1 in 10 shot of an actual Premier League title challenge. Now, that doesn't mean winning the league, but it means just falling short. I'm thinking 91-92, penultimate game of the season. I'm thinking 94-95, last day of the season. Who can forget the West Ham match away when we were just battering them, but just couldn't put it in the net. 98 as well. Okay, Arsenal won the league with about 7-8 game winning streak at the end, but you push them, and so on and so forth. And this is what this last sort of possibility, which I'm calling a 1 in 10 shot, so you can almost guess where I'm at in terms of our predictions for the season. This is all I ask from, right? And it's so we didn't win the league every year under Ferguson, but all bar about 2 years in a 20-year spell, so let's say 18 out of 20 seasons, we challenged. We were there or thereabouts. We were second. We were, last day of the season. We were a post, an unbelievable goalkeeping performance away from winning the league. And as gutting and as devastating those title losses were, just give me that. Give me that year in, year out, and we'll win some leagues and we'll lose some. And that's all you can ask for, because football is random, and I'm not okay with losing league titles like that. But if you're there or thereabouts, eventually, as Ferguson always said, you keep knocking at the door, eventually it will open. Where are you at in these four possibilities? What do you think is the most likely of these four outcomes for this season?
So, let's see.
So let's reverse it in terms of that Premier League title challenge being the sort of number one. Number two is, a comfortable qualification. It looks like this comment here is putting us in the sort of third rung, similar sort of season to one we've just had. Champions League qualification, but not much else. But the second rung is a sort of optimistic outlook of Champions League qualification, maybe plus a cup, plus a Champions League run. And obviously the fourth one is the one we don't want, which is basically us not qualifying for the Champions League.
Yeah. No, I do think that we might be in the top four. I also think that we will definitely get through the Champions League stage, the first stage, for example, and then after that it is what it is, because everybody qualifies anyways from this new format. And to be honest, right, like if we're able to have consistent performances, just the performance itself being a very good level and akin to the quality of player that we now have, especially in our midfield, for example, and in our attack, then I do think that second spot is available. It is very much available. I was actually saying this to people. It was one of my tweets where I was looking at our sort of projection and where we could be, and I was saying to myself, I think, to be honest, if you ask anyone right now about Arsenal, if you say, okay, would Arsenal beat this team, referring to any team they're going to play from now until whenever, you would probably say Arsenal would win. That would probably be without even thinking twice. If you said Arsenal and Hull, who's going to win? You're going to say Arsenal. If you say Arsenal versus City, who's going to win? You're going to say Arsenal. Which means that there's a massive difference between Arsenal and United. Because if you ask yourself who's going to win, Hull or United, you're like, I don't know. I don't know. I hope United win, but I genuinely don't know. And that gap is what basically is the gap between you being champions, which is basically what we would say about City in their pomp. You'd say, are City going to win against whatever? Of course they're going to win. 4-0 probably. You'd say, are Liverpool going to beat Norwich? Of course, it's going to be 4-0 probably. But we're not yet at the stage where we can say that. But I also think that the other teams in the league are also either in a transition period of some sort, lost a massive manager. I think it's underrated that Pep has gone from City because, when you have one of the GOATs managing you, then there has to be a drop-off. It can't just be, there's no way it's just going to be like Maresca. He's just followed. It might be a hangover, right? Which is kind of like what happened maybe with Slot and with Mourinho when he left. That there's a little bit of a hangover of something from the players. But Pep was already having a hard time at the end, So I think second spot is going to be far. So we're talking about maybe 10, 15 points difference. I think between us or between anyone and Arsenal. So I do think second spot's available. I think it'll be much tighter between second, third, fourth, and fifth, I think, together, because I don't think there's that much in these teams. And there's no one that's really proved they can be fully consistent. And we still don't know about Spurs. I mean, we're all just saying Spurs are going to do stuff, but, you know, we've seen De Zerbi. It's not like he's won every game that he's ever managed. He's also been patchy, and that's why he's been in 9 clubs over the last, I don't know, 3 years or something. So that's why I think there is second spot available for everybody, and I think we'll just be fighting for those grabs. So I think top 2 finish. I think second we can do it. Most likely that we are fourth though, and Arsenal probably to win the league. Probably, yeah.
So you're thinking sort of somewhere between the outlooks, sort of comfortable Champions League qualification, but maybe other than getting out of the Champions League group, nothing special. So kind of a plateau, maybe, because that's kind of what happened last season.
No, I do think we'll have a deep cup run because last season we were knocked out of everything, right? I think that we will get somewhere in the Carabao Cup. The funny thing is, I do think we have such a nice team for cup games, especially some of the other players we've seen now in pre-season, right? You've got the Fletcher dudes, which I do think that even though they receive criticism, I think they just show what anybody would show if they're showing up to a team and they're really young and it's their first few games. There's a few things that they're not going to do right. But I think that those sort of players, I think they're the right players. I think Jim Thwaites, for example, he's a good player to have in those type of games. And we'll see, of course, if you've got Tielemans, Baleba, Mainu, Santos, then you can have a deep cup run because you can also have players which are really good, playing in there. And you can give Bruno a rest. So I do think the cup runs will be something. I think we'll do, a nice League Cup. We've been quite good in the League Cup over the last few years. And then maybe the FA Cup. So I do think that it will be a decent season in terms of that. Yeah.
Okay, what about the transfer window? What is your assessment? Give me a score out of 10. Assuming let's just say we get Baleba. Okay, it does look like that's going to happen. Deals fall through, and there's been 1 or 2 this summer already go that way. But let's say we get Baleba. What are you going to give it out of 10, and what else would you like to happen?
Baleba just makes it a 6 out of 10 for me.
Okay.
Because you were supposed to get 3 midfielders anyways, and I think having some good players, like I was saying, from the academy, which can be a part of the squad, especially when needed, especially on a dead rubber European game or something, I think helps. So I think that's a good thing. If it was just a midfield, I'd say it's higher. I'd say it's 8 out of 10. But if I was to look at the whole window, I'd say it's very obvious that the left-hand side is an issue that should have been where we're looking at and when we're targeting. It's very obvious that we need a centre back of some kind.
Do you think? I'm not so sure personally, but
I want a centre back like Harry Maguire, but fast. Then basically you have what you're looking for. I don't want to separate the two because I think when you separate the pace and the good fundamentals of everything else, then you still have a liability. Because unfortunately for centre backs in this day and age, you have to be fast. You just kind of have to be, or a burst. You need to have a burst. You need to get somewhere a little bit quicker. And I think if you look at our most senior centre backs, which are Maguire and Lisandro, right? Martinez is just, his injuries are done him. So I can see he's moving slower. And Maguire has always moved slow anyways. So I think that you still always play with this real risk, especially when you want to evolve, because we've tried to evolve with the same back four. And I think, I don't think that's going to work. So I do think that what I would like is somebody who's like, because look at Arsenal, they've got like Mosquera, for example, right? It's genuinely annoying because he might be young, he might make a few mistakes, but it's annoying playing against him because why is he so big? He's so fast. He allows them to play a certain type of game. And I think that's the one thing. Now they've got this Konza guy, which is, similar thing in terms of these are players that allow them to put the pressure on you. And I think none of the players we have allow us to do that. And the only people that can is Euro and Heaven. But then again, they lack the other fundamentals, which Maguire has. And I think, for me, that's the issue. You've got to have a little bit, like 2% more pace than Maguire has. And he's perfect. If he just has a little more pace, then he can make up for his
He's not going to get it
errors.
at 33.
I know, and that's the thing for me, right? Because that's like in the modern game, like these center backs are being forced to make a lot of errors, and they're being forced to go high, but they're also having the recovery pace to be able to get themselves out of trouble a lot of the times, right? We see, if it's Gabriel, maybe you got to run on him, but he's hunting you down quickly, and he's going to sort of put you off. But our players, if you look at what happens when a person is beyond us, our back four, it's almost hopeless. You're just hoping Bruno and Bumo are making an absolute sprint past everybody to try and get back and do something. So I think we do need a center back which has everything that Maguire has. However, we need some pace in there. So I do think that. I just hope though, maybe Euro and Heaven will start to really grow into that. But we'll see a lot of mistakes. I actually have them as my favorite center backs to play with each other, even though we've got Maguire in them. But I do think these two have potential, but I know they'll make a lot of mistakes. And that's the one thing which I say we need a center back for. Just somebody who's, got the intangibles, but still can run,
I am going to be a bit, or maybe even a lot harder than you in terms of the business this summer. I'm probably going to give it a 4 at the moment, maybe a 4.5, and hear me out as to why. I by the way, I totally get, and by the way, there's loads of asterisks which I'll highlight as I talk, including, of course, transfer fees, etc. But if your objectives are, let's say if we drew up and I'm assuming we did draw up a list of 10 midfielders we wanted in terms of first choice, second choice. Let's just begin that list with a money's no object thing, but we realize that Anderson is going to cost more than, say, 80 million, etc. But for sure, Anderson would have been in that 1 or 2 spot. Fernandez and Edison, we know, were in spots 2 and 3, maybe 3 and 4, something like that. I'm pretty sure Tonali would have been quite high up that list. Maybe Gimaresh as well from Newcastle. I don't know, but for sure Chumaini as well. I'm just saying that these are what we're hoping for. Okay, Chumaini as well, maybe even Kone at Roma as well. But anyway, suddenly we're not getting any of those. I don't believe that Baleba was near the top of that list, or that deal I think would have been done before the World Cup, so he could have been on. He probably wouldn't even be injured right now in terms of the fact that he got injured, I think, for Brighton preseason friendlies, etc. So I'm not saying that none of these 3 midfielders. I think the Tielemans man maybe would have been one of the 3, and then probably 2 more. I don't think Andre Santos was necessarily at the top of that list. Again, I think we'd have moved for him a little bit early, although we did get him fairly early. But he wasn't someone that Chelsea were fighting tooth and nail to keep either. Now, I've seen transfer business like this a million times, including that summer transfer business where we got Michael Carrick, and I thought we'd overpaid for him, and I didn't think he was going to be a game changer in terms of us potentially winning the league. Well, how wrong was I there? Then, of course, I look at another summer transfer window where I thought we'd done all the best business and we were going to... I remember David Beckham suggesting we might go the season unbeaten when we got in Veron and Van Nistelrooy. That was before we sold Jaap Stam, but at that stage, it looked like, oh my goodness me, we're going to walk the league and probably win the Champions League as well. And that season unraveled pretty quickly. In fact, pretty much from day one when we lost the Charity Shield to Liverpool, although Van Nistelrooy did score in that match. So, plus there's still some time to go. But if I just look at the Edison deal, for example, the way that panned out, I don't think it's a great look. Now, maybe he was, maybe it was the right decision, but if you look at the objectives and you see what we've got, I don't believe, like, coming back to Baleba, okay. He was the top of Amarim's list, but he clearly wasn't the top of Michael Carrick's list because that deal would have been done a long time ago. And at least we'd have been trying. He's obviously, number 8 or number 9 on the list, and that's why we've got him. He may end up being a fantastic purchase for us, and he ends up being a game changer in terms of maybe kicking on and potentially challenging for the league. But right now, particularly in the absence of a left back, I also think Lewis Hall, for example, if we tried for him in June, he wasn't in the World Cup squad, so he wasn't busy this summer. He probably was more available in June when Newcastle hadn't sold everything, including the keys to the garden shed. He would have been more gettable in June than he is in August, when they've basically sold everyone and therefore can't afford to lose anyone else. According to Stretford Paddock, in fact, regarding Lewis Hall, he's maybe even in new contract talks. There were some fake tweets out there, I believe, described to Miguel Delaney, so be careful with this one. I don't think he said that Lewis Hall was prepared to go on strike, so just take care with some of those tweets that are flowing around. It may well be the case, but just at least take care with those potential tweets, because I'm not sure it's true. And if this is the end of the business, and it might be, yeah, I'm giving it a 4.5. Harsh, right?
No, harsh. But I think, there's also another way of looking at it. If you said to yourself, what is United's biggest problem, and what has been United's biggest problem, and you say, well, that was the midfield. And you say, all right, have you signed players which, regardless of how we got them, does it make sense for how we want to play football? And your answer might be yes, because you say to yourself, what do we have? What have we gotten in? We've gotten the Santos, we've gotten Tillemans, Baleba. Then you have to say, does this make sense with the idea of how we want to play football? Does it fix certain areas which were big holes in the squad? Can you picture an idea of having certain players in certain positions and it finally making sense to you? Then you could say yes, that has happened. And I think at the end of the day, if you look also at last season, the last transfer window, and you say to yourself, okay, did a lot of the things that we did make sense? And you say, yeah, they did. Did a lot of those things come off well? Yeah, I think they did. Then you would have to say to yourself, I think we have done fairly well compared to some of the summers where we think we've done something, but when you look at it, when it all wears off, the dopamine wears off 2 weeks in, you're like, wait a second, but this is not actually what we needed, or this player doesn't do this, or I've only now noticed that this player doesn't do this. This player from this other league, we never saw him play that much. We only saw compilations. Now we're surprised that he plays like this for a big club like United. Yeah, because that's because that's sometimes what you get with these transfers. But now you look at the strategy and you say, okay, I've seen a lot of these play. I've seen them play against my team a lot. I've seen them dominate my own team's midfield a few times. So am I happy? I'm like, yeah, I think in terms of certain areas, the biggest area, I think we've done quite well. And that's why I said, I think we had 2 priorities. One was to make the whole squad good, and one was to make our midfield good. And if we have to just judge the midfield, then you say, okay, fair enough. And then when you look at everything else, then you can only hope. I do think we'll probably buy 2 more players or something.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I definitely think we'll buy some more players. I've been crashing out on X, and I just don't think that this club is serious about stuff. But I think at the end of the day, there's a part in me which says, I do think they would like to support Michael Carrick. I do think there's a part that looks like they want him to do well. Um, and there's nothing really that screams like, the recruitment team and everybody are at odds with each other. There's nothing that screams like some one person is in charge of everything. Um, and I think that's a good thing, because I think that's one thing that we've had before. You had Ten Hag in charge of everything, and everything was questioned. You had, what's his name, Ed Woodward in charge of everything, and then everything was questioned. But I think now you kind of like looking at it and you're like, who is? I think they're all having a chat with each other, and I can see something. So. Um, yeah, I hope I'm being optimistic, but I still do think we'll sign two more players or sign. I think this was always in the plan, type of a thing, or definitely a left back at least.
It's nice that this little sketch is out for us on Twitter, although I don't quite know why.
This is the worst.
Yeah, but why is he got Sesko there, and it should be the other way around in terms of the.
No, but it's AI. Right?
Like, is it? It's AI.
Yeah,
okay.
It's AI. Like you probably put it down on paper and.
Well, that's one of maybe, but that's one of those you've got to say to AI. Can you just, rotate it 90 degrees or whatever, and then we're good.
I think.
But anyway, I get the point.
Yeah.
I get the point.
Yeah.
If we get a left back, by the way, just coming back to the transfers, and then we'll have a look forward to the Hull match and even some other bigger picture stuff. If we got a left back, say it was Lewis Hall or someone, and I've heard one or two people, including Andy Mitten, say it's quite a tough sell in terms of the fact that you won't necessarily go straight into the team. But I disagree. I think if Lewis Hall wants to sign for Manchester United and he wants to be our left back, and he thinks, and we think, he is going to be maybe England's left back for the next decade, I think it's a really easy sell, because you just say, look, you and Luke Shaw for the next 12 months are going to be fighting each other for that spot. You, because we hope to play 60 or 70 games this season, and you're going to help us do that, you are going to play 30 or 40 games, either from the start or from the bench. You're going to get plenty of match time, and you're going to be our left back for the next 10 years. So it's harder. It's much harder. I remember, like, for example, when kind of we used to play 4-4-2 and you'd have four strikers, and then it sort of became more of a 4-3-3, so you'd often only have one up top. And if if you've got a guy like, let's say, a Van Nistelrooy there, or maybe Rooney's playing number 9 as he did for one season, or so on and so forth, Berbatov or whatever, it's obviously pretty difficult if you're buying a top number, top striker. So therefore you've got two options. You either go for someone like Michael Owen as an impact guy for one season, who's more than happy to be that impact person off the bench, who's going to play maybe, Champions League matches when we've already qualified against Wolfsburg, Carling Cup, etc., like he did in the final that year against Aston Villa. Or you go for a young guy, as in, obviously I'm talking about a different part of the pitch here, but as in Lewis Hall. So it's a guy young enough. If you're buying Lewis Hall at 25, 26, he cannot afford to lose a year of his career, fighting for his place, or maybe even being the reserve left back. But actually, it'll be so close between him and Shaw that actually you're saying, look, it's 51-49. You don't start against Hull, but the minute you go in that team and you grab your spot, it's not like Shaw is the number 1 and you're number 2. It's basically 50-50. And if you end up playing better than Luke Shaw this season, and you're fitter than he is, and you're ready for it, then quite possibly after Christmas, you are starting left back. So it might not even be a whole season. So I don't quite buy that it's a tough sell if you're buying someone who's young, like Lewis Hall. If you're going for 25, 26-year-old, well, then you've got to go top notch and someone who's coming in to replace Luke Shaw. And Luke Shaw then becomes your reserve left back, if you like. But anyway, that's that. If we were to get that would then push it up to, say, a 6 out of 10, and I'd be fine with going into the season, even if no more purchases came in. I get your point about lack of pace at centre-half, but I think we've got enough bodies at centre-half. I think we've got, just going back to our defenders, which I shared on the screen earlier on, the problem is fitness. If we had a season of Martinez and De Ligt fit, Admittedly, there's a little bit of a lack of pace there, but unbelievable experience and still young enough to kick on in terms of being 27 and 28 years old. If we had De Ligt and Martinez fit for most of the season, this is kind of Rio, albeit Rio had pace until he got older and he had the back issues. It's almost Rio and Vidic sort of levels of expectations in so many ways. Vidic would probably be more like the De Ligt and Rio would be more like the Martinez. And not to underestimate, of course, Martinez's abilities going forward. And I do think at times we did miss him at times towards the end of last season in an inability to control matches. Then you throw in Aiden Heaven, who I think has kicked on and will continue to kick on and may end up playing more matches at centre half than De Ligt and Martinez just by virtue of the fact he's fit and raring to go. Then you've got Maguire, who I think can still do a job and will still play 10 to 20 matches. Fantastic. Great. Still pop up with the odd important goal. The big question mark for me is Lenny Yoro. I have a lot of doubts about him going forward. I've not seen anything in the 2 years he's been at the club. It might be 3. I think it's 2. I get my years muddled up. I think he signed under the Ten Hag in the summer of 24. I have a lot of doubts. Heaven has flown past him, in my opinion, in terms of being close to the first team. And he's probably the 5th choice, even when everyone's fit at that centre-half spot. He might get some games at right back as he did in pre-season, but we'll see. What are your thoughts on my kind of transfer business, but also the defence going forward?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, like you're right. If we manage to get Lewis Hall, I think he's basically, for me, if you having watched Shaw very closely for a long time, and having watched how Lewis Hall plays, for me that is almost the same player. It's almost the same player. It's like watching Luke Shaw when he was young.
Mm-hmm.
Burst of pace, can come inside, can keep the ball really well, doesn't make many passing errors. I think, and it's just marauding, and he's relentless, and it's over and over and over, right? And I think if we got a Lewis Hall who can be fit forever, I think having a fullback that's always fit, that is always firing, for me, I think that just brings us up a massive level. Midweek games, Champions League games, you still have Luke Shaw. For me, in those type of games,
Sure.
big games maybe that you want to do something specific. Maybe because Shaw is more tactically adept, then you'd want to have maybe a Shaw in there. But I think Lewis Hall has shown he's the type of player. I think you can see when he was introduced into the Newcastle team, when you see him playing against either, I think when I watched him play when it was Chelsea or something, I was still like, this guy, he's such a good player, and I think he is made for a team like this, I think. So I think having him would mean that we fixed a lot of problem areas as well, because I think Carrick has this insistence of not playing Dogu at left back. So I think we'll never see him at left back. So I do think if he's going to insist on Dogu playing left wing, then they have to get a left back. But in terms of the defense, I have to disagree because
Sure. Please do.
I think De Ligt is one of the most. I call him a foreplay defender. Like he's like a foreplay. Like he prepares you for the good stuff, and then there is no good stuff, and I think I don't know. He's a little bit confusing for me because I think he would do really well in a team that is already doing really well. That's what I think of him. But I think in a team that's not doing well, he's got a few too many frailties or a few attributes which he doesn't have. Like I said,
I mean, at times I have seen milk turn quicker than De Ligt. I will say that. But...
Exactly. Sorry.
No problem.
I think for me that's an issue. The fact that the way he turns, how fast that is, recovery on the ball. I think we lose something massive on the ball if we don't have either Maguire, for example. I think from some of the things we've seen from Euro, yes. And I think with Martinez, we get a lot on the ball, and I think we could work with that. We could absolutely do that. But I think again, an issue that we lack is the guy that will partner him either lacks experience or lacks pace the whole time. And I'm like, but I need him to be fair. I need a person to allow Martinez to actually just always be in this team as well, because I rate him really highly. I think that's a proper centre back. I know he doesn't have as much pace as he used to have, but he's very smart.
Yeah,
He doesn't get beaten in the air as much as people think he does. He's really smart in
sure.
preparing for aerial challenges. You'll see he doesn't get involved in aerial challenges because he gets rid of the striker before the ball lands. He's really aggressive, so he brings up, I think, the emotion of your team as well. He brings up the standards of your team, because when you see him going into attack, or when you see him, leaving something in, when you see him really being aggressive, I think that also is something that raises the team itself as well. So I think having a player like that, he's got some intangibles, which I like to see. And I think Heaven is going to be a star. Won't even mention, is going to be a star. And I think Euro will also be. I think Euro will be a star. I just think
Okay.
he's. You know what the thing is? I think because he came with this Wonder Kid tag, and because he cost a lot,
Yeah.
I think that people thought that he is close to the finished article. But also remember something: if he had gone to Madrid, he would have been in the same situation as Dean Howson, right? He wouldn't have been. He would have had a season to struggle, 2 seasons to struggle, but he would have had other senior players around that can also fill in. Carreras, he went there, and he's been good, but he's had a big, massive bad patch as well, which can only happen if you're young at a big club as well, especially if the whole team's not performing. So I think if that had happened, I don't think people would be looking at Euro if it was a Real Madrid and he's not yet in the team. I think he'll just be looked as like Kamavinga, to say, no, he's still coming on, so I do think that just him being at United, there's a more bigger expectation because we don't have certain tools. So we already think that this guy had to be in the team right now. But actually, you can see he's improved his physicality. He's gotten bigger. He doesn't look like a person who's bad for the dressing room. He looks like a good head. He looks like a good kid. So I think at the end of the day, I think he's one that I have time for because he's got all the attributes that are there, and you just hope that he'll be coached well, he'll have stability. It's almost like for me, like the Chris Smalling case. That guy could have been anything. He could have been anything if he had stability, good coaches. If he had Sir Alex's whole career, we'd be talking of Chris Smalling as something a little bit different because he was always available. He was quick. He could do certain things. He scored some goals, but he was kind of funny because he made some errors, and we were in a banter era. So all of a sudden, all of our banter players that weren't as good as what we had before, we had to laugh at. So I think Euro has a lot. He is in the same boat like that. There's something that I can see. So we'll see what happens. But I'm just not as keen on our centre back options that much because I think pace is the one thing. I just want to have pace so that I can dominate a game. I just want to
Got it.
feel like I'm okay with it.
Okay, let's move forward and look at Hull. We will be playing Hull, of course, away on Saturday. There'll be no Baleba in the squad, and even if he is signed before the weekend, he's obviously injured for now anyway. I'm just going to share this tab. I'm going to pick my team, and I'm going to do it pretty quickly, most of which will be fairly obvious. I'll go with Lamans in goal, for example, and then I'll go for Dallo at right back. Interesting that we've done this preview and we haven't mentioned Dallo, but normally he gets a mention or two for one reason or another. But I'm okay with the listen. There's a bit like the centre back thing. There was a priority for me this season, and there was big surgery needed in the centre midfield. Then it was left back for me. Then I would probably go if we still have some surplus and there's a forward out there, a forward who could probably play number 9 or a wide role, albeit that Rashford in theory should fill that role. But anyway, I digress. We'll go with Shaw at left back, although for some reason I've just put him at centre half, so I'll probably go back, and we'll go with What's the situation with our centre halves? I know De Ligt is not really ready, but I mean Martinez played some minutes against Milan, didn't he?
Yeah, don't
So
think he'll
it
play
is.
though.
You don't think he'll play?
I think what was that lineup that he went with? It was who played with Maguire in preseason?
Let's have a
Was
look
it
at the
Heaven?
AC Milan Man United starting 11. Just a second. Because I'm kind of fine with it being Heaven and Martinez or Heaven
Yeah, I
and
think it'll be
Maguire, for
Heaven and
example.
Maguire. I
I'm
think
just
it'll
having a
be
look.
Heaven
So
and
we started with Lamens in goal. Yeah, it was Maguire and Heaven. And I'm
yeah,
okay with that, although I know we shipped 4 goals, but it is what it is. And if Martinez is just not ready, then do not play him. Have him on the
against
bench and
Hull.
maybe give him half an hour.
Against Hull, I think that's better.
Exactly.
Yeah, against Hull, that's better because either way, they can just you can just shift them, and Shaw can be high up, and then you can sort of have a back three, right?
Yeah, sure.
Sort
Would
of
you
a
go
thing.
for
So
this? Would you choose the same first 5 players then, like I've just done?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I have here as well.
It's pretty obvious. I'll have fingers crossed that Martinez is fit and ready for the bench. Obviously, have Yoro on the bench possibly as well. But
Yeah,
that's kind
yeah,
of where we're at. In the midfield and going forward is where it gets more interesting, particularly as I don't think Sesko is quite ready to start. So actually, I'm going to go to the number 9 position, and I think we have really 2 choices because I
yeah.
don't. To be honest with you, I would sell Xerxes, especially if we could buy another player. I guess in the absence of buying another player, maybe we would keep him, and also we'd need some suitors. But for me, I'm not thinking of Xerxes right now, and probably not Rashford, certainly not at number 9. So then it's basically Umbumo or Cunha, and I think I'll
I
start with
think
Umbumo
Mbeumo.
there.
Yeah, I think Mbeumo gets a start there. Yeah.
So this is the easy bit. I think this is probably 6 players that many of us, especially if we assume that Martinez is not ready to start, would choose. I think this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. Mount is almost certainly out, so that rules that. Of course, the number 10, I think, is also
Yeah.
pretty easy.
Mm.
Let me see if I can find our good friend Bruno, although it's putting him here, but fingers crossed I
Yeah.
can
I,
do
I actually think
something.
I actually think it's not even that complicated, to be honest. I think you can almost tell who Carrick's front
But this is
five.
what I'm also going for what I want rather
Oh yeah. Oh,
than
okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
what
Fair
Carrick
enough.
would go for. But I'm sure they'll be mostly similar. But if we got this 7, I think we're in entire agreement, right? So
Yeah.
far, you and I.
Yeah.
Um, this is where it gets a bit trickier. What's the situation with Cunha? Is he ready to start post World Cup? I know he's not injured, but there's this kind of post World Cup hangover for 1 or 2 players, I think.
Carrick likes Dogu. You know he likes him. you
Yeah, I
you'd
do, but
rather
listen, this is Hull away. This is not
yeah.
Madrid in the Bernabeu.
True, but Carrick would rather have Cunha
But
number
who would you
9.
rather have? And Cunha,
Well,
Cunha started, but I guess Cunha started in the number 9 role against Milan. Now, of course,
yeah,
there were a heap of changes,
yeah.
but
But
I mean,
I think he would rather
Cunha
have
starts
Cunha
somewhere,
9
right?
than play at the wing. I think in his heart, I feel like Carrick just likes Dogu there for security
Yeah, but
purposes.
who are you starting? I mean, we're starting Cunha somewhere, right? I think
Yeah, no, I think he starts on the left if he does start. But I do
Cunha starts on
think,
the
yeah,
left.
I think he would start on the left.
And what about Diallo? Is he fit and firing? Is he ready?
Yeah, probably Ahmad on the other side. That's
Yeah.
normally what Carrick likes, I think.
But this is what I like as well for this match.
Mm.
Maybe we're
Well,
2-0 up with 20 minutes to go and it's looking a bit dicey. We can bring Dorgu on for Cunha or even Dorgu on for Bumo and move
do
Cunha
you,
up front.
do you know what I
Um,
would do?
Go on. What would you do? Tell me.
It's it's might be unpopular, but especially for a Hull, I would have Lacey playing.
Would you?
I would
In
have
place of
Lacey
who?
playing. I would have him playing on either side, either on Diallo side or Cunha side.
And take
Because
Diallo out, for example.
yeah, I think maybe Cunha out and then put Amadial or something like this, because I feel like we are going to have a lot of the ball anyways at some stage, and they're going to be camped, and I think we need players that can move in between the lines. So I do think maybe if he doesn't start, I think he might be a solution if the game is deadlocked. I think
But would
in
you
these
like to
games
see
it's
Lacey
nice.
start?
To be honest, yeah, I would love to see
Sure,
Lacey
sure, sure,
start.
sure. This
I'd
is your
love to see him
team.
start.
This is you're a Man United manager for the day, all right? So we're gonna take him away from there. We don't want him there. We want him here. So this would be your front four, right?
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll be
Yeah,
happy.
fair enough. Fair enough. I'm going to go with Cunha in that role, but for sure Lacey will be on the bench for me. So we're pretty much in agreement, you and I, on 8 players, because we've both got the same goalkeeper and back four. We've both got Fernandez, of course, in the hole behind, and Bumo. We've both got Diallo, for example, in our front three. But you're going to go for Lacey instead of Cunha. I'll have Cunha instead of Lacey. What about the central midfield roles? Because this is where it does get tricky, I think, and it will get tricky going forward. In fact, I do want to come to our 11 for the season, but we'll come to that in a moment. Who are we going to play in these holding roles or these 2 midfield slots on for you on Saturday? Who would you like to see there?
Well, I 100% know that it's gonna be Santos and Tielemans.
And you would have Santos and Tielemans too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would too.
Yeah. And I think that's mainly because I think
Maru's not quite ready. Baleba's not joined yet. Ugate's injured.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think Fletcher might be one of the Fletchers might be on the bench as well to make up those numbers. And I just think when you look at what Carrick was trying to do and how he wants to play and what he's been doing in preseason, Santos has played every game almost that he's been there. He's been very important. And of course, they've looked to get Tielemans and Bruno to be together in every situation possible, every training session, every game, everything, every stretch. Those two are basically almost nailed on starters. I think in a lot of games, because I think the trick, I think what Carrick has been trying to do, or what United always try to do, is find a way to get Bruno the ball, but then they always fail to do that, and then Bruno has to come and get the ball. And I think what we're now trying to do is evolve into a place where Bruno can just be a person who is where Tielemans and Bruno are doing the same thing, but on opposite ends of the field, and find how they can find each other in those things instead of losing something in attack. And now you'll see Bruno a lot playing with Mbumo probably as a 2, or being a support striker, that kind of role where he's going to score. I think he's going to score a lot more goals than he assists this season, actually. So I think that this team, especially just because if I see Bruno, then I'm thinking, yeah, probably Tielemans is going to start. And then you have to think to yourself, how are we going to get the ball, control the ball? Then I think Santos would be there.
Rashford for me starts on the bench this weekend and is kind of a bench player. But this is, maybe going forward, he's in the team, but it's up to him. I find the Rashford thing kind of not as controversial maybe as a lot of people make out. I think a sale, although I understood the reasons behind it, I think it would have been very cheap to let him go for like 28 million quid or whatever that figure was on his head. And as soon as Barcelona didn't take up that option, I was like, sure, if someone comes in for 50 or 60 million, which I think is his value, then great. But if they're not coming in for him, and we don't have the issue that it was just impossible under Amorim. For sure, if Amorim was still here, it just would have been. But actually, with a new coach and a new situation, I don't think he had an issue with other players. It's not like, it wasn't like the Ronaldo and Van Nistelrooy situation. So if he's getting on okay with the coach, if he's getting on okay with his teammates weren't like mega annoyed with him. He did decent at Villa. He did very well at Barcelona, albeit that Barcelona ultimately went for the younger option in Gordon, and that is their choice, etc. And we do need, as I said, I think if we sold Xerxes and Rashford, for example, and brought in 60 or 70 million, I would like to see that immediately reinvested in a guy who can play number 9 or in one of those 3 positions behind the front man, and maybe even both of those roles, if you know what I mean. So let's say it was a player who could play as a striker, but also off the striker somewhere. But anyway, he's back in the squad, and I think it does mean that probably there isn't the finances to buy a forward player, at least this summer, if he remains, especially if Xerxes doesn't go as well. And I'd welcome him. And here we go for it. And if you don't produce this season, 12 months from now, we sell you. But for now,
go for it. It's actually really funny, man. This Rashford thing as well. Yeah, like you're saying, for me, it's not a big deal because you can see that like the players are chilled. People are okay with him coming back to the squad, and also he's a genuinely nice guy, right? He's a genuinely nice dude. There was no one saying that they don't like him or they don't respect him in the club. No one ever said any of that, right? So I think the issues with him are more about his own motivation to play and how to make it look like, because perception rules the world, right? So that's the problem with him, the fact that people perceive things when they just look at it. What is his body saying? What's his behavior looking like? And I think for him, that's going to be the most important thing, that mental thing to say, even if I don't feel like this, I need to make it look like I feel like this, because that's how you get rid of the perception sometimes that you don't run hard enough or you don't do that. Can he say to himself every time that I need to chase this down? I'm so tired right now, but let me just go. Let me just do it.
Yeah, there was the clips of him in the FA Cup final, the one that we lost to City about 2 or 3 years ago, and there was a lot of like half-hearted challenges, and exactly. I remember that doing the rounds.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't even look at those clips, and I never actually take that much credence into them, maybe because I do think that the game state also has something to do with it. If Ronaldo was losing 5-0 against Barcelona, he was also going to be walking around and the balls is going to be getting bopped around in triangles. Fair enough. Like, it happens generally. My question would be, why is no one else getting the ball? We're clearly just getting passed around. So it's not even fully him, I would say. But I do think that in the situations where it wasn't so intense, just in the normal games where you're supposed to show your authority, you're supposed to show that you're Rashford. The one thing that's not allowing you to do that is just the idea that you're not mentally aggressive. You're not always aggressive. People can, fullbacks can get at you. Fullbacks can decide that they're not afraid of you. And I think for him, with a slight loss of pace and a little bit of injuries and all of that stuff, I think that really just affects the entire outlook. I get that he can't sprint like he used to because of all the injuries, and he's a bit older and all of that stuff. And I think he's not going to run away from that perception unless there is some sort of, some sort of change, because I think a lot of people are looking for this specific thing. Is he going to run the yards? Is he going? Because if you look in the games, you can tell when Cunha's walking. There's a lot of times he's walking, but there's a lot of times that he's chasing. There's a lot.
Yeah, no, but if you remember that goal we got against Everton, I mean, where he's chasing back at left back and he tackles and then also does an unbelievable pass.
Exactly.
And for me, the goal was Cunha's. That was all. I know people praise Sesko for the finish, but honestly, it wasn't that difficult given the position of. And I'm not blaming their keeper. Who's there? Pickford. I'm not saying he should have been in a bit different position, but the fact that basically Sesko is 8 yards from goal and the keeper's on the line. I mean, you're just not missing from there. So
but you see, John, that's the perception, right? Like that Cunha is a player who's aggressive,
who fights,
will fight for 7 out of 10 of the things that he goes for, right? So you won't notice the other time when he gets bypassed and then he just trots back or he walks back. But that's the thing. He's arrived with that perception that this guy will still fight and he's still aggressive and he still does this. And I think that's where Rashford is starting from. How do I build up the way that I'm perceived by United fans? That how do I let my love for the club translate? Because I think that's the one thing. There's a big gap between do you love the club and is it translating on the pitch? Do we see it? And I think if it's not even just about scoring goals now. I think the United fans know, yeah, you can score goals, yeah, you can do this, but now it's a question of, but when it's rough, when it's tough, when it's all of this, how do you look like you care? Do you look like I can rely on you? Do you look as upset about this loss or what's happening in the game? And I think if he gets rid of that perception, then no one's ever going to talk about Rashford in any other way because he'll still score goals. He'll still score goals, still going to get chances, but he just needs to change the perception that he drinks a lot or he doesn't train a lot or he does this or he does that. And it's unfortunate sometimes. It's kind of like if someone accuses you of doing a crime, the amount of work you have to do just to show, even if they show that you definitively did not do this thing, but the amount of effort you need to put to clear your name is extremely exhausting because the way you're perceived is like, I don't know, you might have done it. You could be that guy. So yeah, so I think that's really important. He needs to. This is a lot more than just a football thing for Rashford. There's a lot more about, can he change the way people think about him and the way people look at him? And sometimes that's the biggest battle that he can face, I think.
Okay, I've just got my United 11 when everybody is fit and firing. This is kind of an 11, assuming that everyone is healthy, going into the Man City game in about 4 weeks from now, something like that. I forget when it is exactly. This is what I would go for. If everyone is playing to their potential, you'll see that there's a couple of gaps on there because I've not got Baleba because he's obviously not on that list, but for some reason De Ligt isn't there as well. Maybe it's because it's such a long time since he played for us. I was at West Ham. I went to the West Ham home match last year, and it was a shock that De Ligt wasn't in the lineup. I was like, oh, okay, sugar. What happened to him? And then it was just like, oh, he'll be back next week. He'll be back the week after. He'll be back in a month. Oh, he's out for the season. Oh, he's not going to start the new season. But anyway, I digress. I've got this also in a sort of a more solid kind of graphic here that I'm going to show you. It's a little bit on the attacking side. So, but I just think that, let's say Man City get off to a shaky start, which I think they might do, and we're at home. Now, this is me going a few weeks down the line. Maybe Madrid away in the Bernabeu. Maybe Umbumo's form is not worthy of being in. And I think at times towards the second half of last season, it wasn't. Maybe Sesko doesn't kick on. All ifs, buts, and maybes. But for me, I think everyone would at least agree with the goalkeeper, right back and left back, as much as Dalot has his haters. I think from there on, it gets more interesting. I think everyone would have Bruno in there and everyone would have Cunha somewhere in their team. Now, you'd have Martinez, right, in your 11 if everyone's fit and firing?
Yeah.
You would. So then who would you have alongside Martinez?
Let's see. I think actually would I have Martinez? That's the thing. Would I actually have him? I think I would have Heaven, to be honest.
You go Heaven and
I would have Heaven. You're gonna hate me for this, but I would have
Yoro.
Heaven and Yoro.
My goodness me. Okay.
Yes.
No, fine. I love it. Yeah, sure. Who else? What? Okay, that's fine. So I'm just putting your 11 into a little computer as well, and we'll get it up on the screen in a moment. But for now, we've got mine, albeit it looks a bit small, so I'm going to grow it a little bit. Where are you? There we go. Thank you, Mr. ChatGTP. There we go. So that's my 11. Now, you've got your 11. We're gonna build that in a moment. But Bruno, an obvious one. Cunha's in your 11, right? Somewhere. No? Are you still there? I can't hear you.
Hello? Are you there?
Oh, yeah, I see. I don't see you, but I can hear you.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. I don't know what's going on.
Don't worry.
Yes, I can hear
You'd
you.
have
Can you see
you'd
me?
have Cunha in your 11, right? Somewhere.
Um, would I? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult to know where because I do find that front three, because I think Bruno's obviously a solid at number 10, even if he wears 8. It's just the thing is with our front three, that front three I've got on the screen, but also you could throw Diallo in there and Dorgo as well as options. I Cunha's best position, I think, is off the left, but he might have to fill in as a number 9 or off the right because of the form. What I found last season, particularly in the second half of last season, is Cunha was the only pretty much the constant. Even if he didn't start Carrick's first 2 matches, after that, he was the one sort of guaranteed 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 guy. The problem is that Sesko would be a 6 one week, get dropped, come off the bench, score. Oh my goodness, he's got to start the following week, not score, and maybe we drop points or whatever. And it was all, and Mbeumo's form was like that too. And it was like, okay, we might need Cunha at number 9, or we might need Cunha on the right. And then obviously Dorgo gets injured, so that makes things a little bit easier. Sesko got injured right near the end of the season as well. But it was just that Cunha kept having to move position just because of the lack of form from elsewhere, or maybe fitness as well. But for me, Cunha gets in the 11. I reckon 90% of United fans would have Cunha in their fit and firing 11, as I like to call it, when everyone's fit. Somewhere. It's just a case of whether you put him in on the left or whatever. But he's in there. Bruno's in there too. Would you have Mbeumo in your 11?
Of course, always. Uncle Mbeumo.
Oh, really? Okay. And would you have him
in every 11?
Would you have him as number 9 or out wide where I've got him at the moment?
Funny enough, I would have him at number 9.
Okay.
I actually think he's like probably our our best finisher. And yeah, I'd have him. I'd have him in the squad all the time. I think he's better when he is not on the touchline, and I think he's better when he's just not stuck over there. I think he also has a great relationship with Ahmad, and I think having 2 left footers almost coming off the right hand side is a lot confusing for the other teams as well. So I think tactically that actually works quite nicely because of the angles they create for each other. And I think.
And so, who are you going to put? Who are you going to put wide right? Dallo or Dorgu? Or are you going to bring Dorgu in and move Cunha across, or are you just going to bring Ahmad in?
That's the thing as well. For a lot of things to work, like our press, Ahmad needs to also play. So, to be honest, I don't think Sesko is going to be fit like that by that City game, anyways. I think he'll still be getting reintroduced very slowly. So I still think when everyone is just fit, I think Mbeumo, I would have him up top. I'd have Sesko out, and I'd still have Ahmad on the right.
So you go Ahmad right, Cunha left, Bruno up front. Sorry, Bruno in the number 10. That's nice. Yeah. All right, let me just come back a moment, and we'll put mine branch in new chat. Yes, that's what I want. We'll bring my team back on the screen, and we'll have yours on the screen in a moment. Let me just get mine on the screen very quickly. Okay, I think this is my team here. Yeah. All right. Now I think comes the really, because I wouldn't wildly disagree with most choices amongst the front three. I think Cunha has to be in there somewhere, whether it's on the left, on the right, or up top. And then it's a case of, do you know what? Depends on who's playing better at the time between Ahmad, Sesko, Mbeumo, and Dorgu as well, although you're a bit bigger on Mbeumo than me. Now, this midfield too, I saw the guys from the Talk of the Devils podcast today, and most of them, and in particular, Carl Anker, was like, Mainu's not close to the team for him when everyone's fit and firing. But that was an interesting situation. But I've got Mainu and Baleba as my sort of two other midfielders. I think they can interchange quite well. I think they're both in their own ways, box to box, probably Baleba more than Mainu, but Baleba can sit. Mainu finds it a bit more difficult to sit than I think than other midfielders, and so that's the other issue I have with the transfer window. I don't quite, at the moment, I don't quite see how it all comes together. I don't see an obvious. Whereas if Chumaini had come in, right, for example, it would have been like, well, he's obviously the number 6. Mainu stays at number 8, and Bruno's number 10, and that's just kind of like clear. Or if we bought maybe the problem with Anderson, I thought, even as special as I think he is, and irrespective of the price, the problem I had with Anderson is I don't think Anderson and Mainu work very well as a duo, as I think Thomas Tuchel came to that conclusion after seeing the friendly against Japan. And then I think they also played a couple of training games for England in the summer, and that was pretty much decided for him that Mainu wasn't going to play much of a role. As it turned out, no minutes at all after he was ruled out injured for the third place playoff. But anyway, coming back to my midfield two, that's who I'm going for. You've obviously got Santos and Tielemans as options, and they probably will start the season. But if everyone's fit and firing, who are your next and final two players in this United team?
Well, for me, it's not a question that Kobbie Mainoo starts every single game that ever lived. He is my absolute favorite footballer at United. And it's very funny because I've seen Kobbie Mainoo play with different midfield partners, and he's made our midfield situation better in every case. So I don't think that people playing with him are the problem. I don't think he's the problem whenever someone says who can play with this guy, because I think he's the guy that actually has the things ticking, but won't get credit because the things he does are not the things that which you can always see visibly, right? And if I said to you, all the other players that are there, do they have the propensity to lose the ball easily by an unforced error? You'd say yes. But I'll tell you now, statistically in the league, Mainoo has the least propensity out of any midfield player to lose the ball when he's under pressure. So what does that tell you about everybody else on the ball in the team, right? That tells you that a lot of players are not up to the technical level of this person at doing this thing. So, even when I was watching the AC Milan game as well, like, without bringing Mania into the equation because it was the first game or whatever, but just looking at the other players and when they had pressure on them, how they reacted to having pressure, how they reacted to, when they needed to play out. It was very difficult. And we've seen this for years and years with some of them. It wasn't something new. And I think we also saw it a little bit with Santos, right? We couldn't get out. So who's the one person that can do this? Kobbie Mainoo. Who's the other person that can do it? Baleba, right?
So are you going to go with Mainoo and Baleba as well?
Like you have them. However, here's my however, because I genuinely don't think that by that time when we get there, Baleba would be, because he still needs to prove something to me as well. I think he's an amazing footballer because he has football ability. But I don't think that from the season which he had last season, I need him to show that he's a Manchester United midfielder. Mainoo's shown that he can be a Manchester United midfielder. He's shown that. But next to him, I would have a Tielemans next to Mainoo. Some people will say that will not work, but even when I
want
coach,
to try at least.
Yeah, when I coach, I am a big proponent of, I'm a big fan of maximizing player strengths rather than trying to balance something that someone else doesn't have, especially in football. Because I think when you can keep the ball, when you can have the ball, when you can do when you have the ball for longer periods of time. I think that that's for me that's a better footballing philosophy, and I think that is evolving for me. So I would have those two because I know on the ball would be great, and that is forgetting that I don't think that our center backs. If our center backs were faster, my midfield would be great. But anyways, I like ball players, so that's what I would do. To be fair, that's how I see football. Um,
Fair enough.
and
Fair enough.
yeah,
So I'm gonna put yours up on the screen in a moment, but just one more time to reflect on mine, particularly those who are listening to the podcast back. This is my United 11 when everyone's fit and firing, and hopefully everyone is doing so by the time we play Man City at home in about a month from now. So it'll be Lamens in goal. I'll have Dallo at right back, Shaw at left back. Oh, this is Oh, for some reason I got Heaven and Yoro in there, but I don't want Heaven and Yoro. I want I want
Delect.
yeah, it's all sorts of things I'm trying to do at the same time. But Delict and Martinez, and I would also go with Baleba and Mainu as my sitting midfielders or midfielders that could rotate perhaps going forward. I would have Cunha wide left. I'd have Mbumo wide right. Bruno in behind Sesko. That is how I would like to see us basically maybe playing in the Champions League final next summer. That would be amazing, which I think is going to take place in the Metropolitano Stadium in Madrid. That, of course, is Atletico's stadium. I'm now going to share your team on the screen as well. Just a moment. Here we go. I think I've got it. Yeah, here we go. So this is Kai's team, which is going to come up for you on the screen. And I'm also going to read it out for those listening back to the audio, which will be Lamens in goal, Shaw at left back, Dallo at right back. Very little to discuss there, at least for now, in terms of the transfer business we've not done thus far. Heaven and Yoro, I think it's a controversial choice, particularly Yoro, but fair enough. Tielemans or Baleba, depending on what's going on, but you're a big fan of Tielemans, so him alongside Mainu. And then going forward, Ahmad on the right, Cunha on the left, Bruno in behind Umbumo. That is Kai's 11 when
And can I
everyone's
say, Shaw is only there because he's the only fullback at the club. Okay,
yeah, right. Yeah, of course, he's the only left back, really. I mean, I've heard that Baleba could play left back, but yeah, I'm the same. Although, he had a good season. My main issue is I don't think he'll have another healthy season in the same way he did this season, and he's not quite got those bursting lung busting runs forward that he used to be capable of, and then get back into position. For me, I mean, it was a pity when he broke his leg because he was just beginning to. He had a dodgy first period at United. I think it was his first season, wasn't great. And I think it was the beginning of his second season. He started playing really well. Then he breaks his leg against Feyenoord, I think, in the Champions League. It was against someone in the Champions League anyway. And
but he
then
already had a lot of injuries just before that.
he had as well, yeah.
Yeah.
He still had good spells, but there was the bit under Mourinho where Mourinho
Yeah.
just said that he had to be his coach. But I think under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was probably his most consistent, sustained period coming into the peak of his career. He's probably just a little bit past his peak. I'm okay with going into the season with Shaw at left back. I just wish we had another option to make it competitive. And Lewis Hall would be amazing, but we'll see if that manifests itself. Listen, Kai, it's been an hour and a half. Wonderful that you could join me today.
Yes, no, it's been great to be here. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And to everybody
Talking
else,
nice.
make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Do get in the comment section whether you agree or disagree with some of our predictions and also your hopes and dreams for the season coming up. But yeah, big thanks, Kai. Do check out Kai. He's got his X profile, as I can see there, What's Cooking in the Kitchen profile. That's, I think, your name, whereas it's actually KAI_Gozo. That's right, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
There we go. Where does What's Cooking in the Kitchen come from, by the way? Apart from, I mean, it's kind of a sort of a well-known phrase, but where does it come from in terms of?
It's actually because I make music. I'm a producer, so
Okay.
like maybe I don't know, 10 years ago, one of my friends asked me what was cooking in the kitchen in reference to was I making any new music? And I
Okay.
was like, Hey, I like that. One word, one full word. What's cooking? That's the name. So
there we go.
That's where it
so
comes
make sure
from.
you
Yeah.
make sure you check out Kai on X, and it was wonderful to have you on board today. Also, hitting that subscribe button. We're still relatively new. We did a few pods towards the end of the last season, but we hope to do 1 or 2 per week as we look forward to this season. I think we're very close to 100 subscribers, but we want to get to 1,000. In fact, we've hit 100 subscribers probably during this stream. So thank you very much to all of you who've hit the subscribe button. But we want to keep going, of course, and hopefully get to 1,000 as soon as possible. And so, yeah, thanks for joining. And you know the drill, which is like and subscribe and hit the notification button. Cheers, everybody. Bye.
Cheers.